Hey, I'm Andre.
And I'm Jesus.
Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Go to the Movies podcast. This week we are joined by Daniel Kumi, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Uh, Hi, I'm Daniel Kumi. I'm from Atlanta, really a suburb of it, but it's neither here nor there. And I'm a film student at a university in North Georgia. If you want to check out some of the stuff that I've done, go on dkmedia.squarespace.com. I'm, amateur filmmaker. I'm just trying to make my way out there, but yeah, shoot me a text or anything. My Instagram is daniel.kumi, so Kumi. Pretty accessible.
Awesome, yeah.
Cool.
We're really glad that you signed up and that you were available to talk with us. And so this week, well, the title suggests that we're talking about 90s independent cinema. And so for this particular movie, we're going to be jumping over the pond into Scotland. And the movie that we're talking about is Trainspotting. And what made you pick that one in particular, Daniel?
So, when you think of, 90s independent, I guess, this is technically late 80s, but, so you got, Sex Love, or Sex Lies videotape, Reservoir Dogs, and, all those, really, really important movies. But I think this one is kind of, the culmination of what, 90s independent filmmaking have been building towards. And I think it's such an interesting, movement in film because it kind of sets the stage for, everything that comes afterwards. And I think, in our post-ironic landscape that we all live in, it's kind of interesting to look at, how just irony is viewed. Because you have movies that are doing things that are very, very metatextual. They can very much, talk and reference pop culture, and before that, it wasn't necessarily like that, and this is the first time that that begins to happen in film, and I think it's a really interesting time.
Yeah.
And it's just having a lot of people who were making their first or second feature, and then would be huge major players in cinema for the next 30 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's in the film history classes that I've taken, it's not a time period that we really focused on, which I'm disappointed in, because it's there's so many movies that I've seen that are from that era that are really they're the defining moments for these huge, well, directors that are huge now at least. And so this is cool because Trainspotting was one that both Jesus and I had never seen, surprisingly. I've been studying film now for 2 years, and I still have never seen Trainspotting until 2 hours ago. So I don't know why it ended up like that, but I guess kind of go into it at the beginning. As we usually do, we kind of look at the reviews or ratings that are given by the bigger companies, I guess you could call them, that do it. So, and then give our take on it. So for Trainspotting, IMDb gives it an 8.1 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 91, and then Metacritic an 83. And when I look on, for example, Letterboxd, which is just audience reviews basically, it's much more pushing towards 4.5 out of 5 stars.
That sounds more like the Rotten Tomatoes score with the 91%.
Yeah, in my opinion, the Rotten Tomatoes score is somewhat
little more
lowballing
accurate.
it, but it's closer. I don't really know how these get calculated, and I don't really care, but
what is the Rotten Tomatoes score based off of, actually? Is it I thought it was audience score too, but it's
a mix of audience and critic score, but they take the average rating of whoever's score, and that's the percentage. So it's let's say I gave 4 out of 5, someone gave it a 6 out of 10, taking that average score between that, and that's the positive rating or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I noticed that Metacritic and IMDb, they have it tends to be a little lower than Rotten Tomatoes.
And oh gosh, I was just curious because the late film critic Roger Ebert, he has so many polarizing views on movies. He gave Trainspotting 3 stars, which
What?
I mean, okay, Roger Ebert, I don't really haven't tried to go too much into what he reviews really, because it's kind of like, you know, old white man takes on a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would personally agree that like, and I'm assuming that you would too, Daniel, with like the 91% like being like the most accurate to what it truly is.
Yeah, I think probably it's around there. That's probably about right.
Yeah. And
what happened?
go ahead.
I was gonna say this is another one of those instances where I'm not really that used to seeing the actors outside of the normal thing. So it was kind of weird for me to like be watching the movie like, hey, look, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh wait, isn't that like
Oh,
one
yeah.
of the movies like, holy shit, that's fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah. I had the same moment. I was like, what?
Yeah, I kind of was. I mean, I'd seen like Ewan McGregor and other stuff. I just never seen him that young, so that's what kind of threw me
Yeah,
off. Because it's
yeah,
like the
that was
first
kinda
shot
weird.
is like a close up like dolly shot of him running like on the street. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a young person. Damn, but yeah, I
Yeah, because
guess
it's pre-Phantom Menace too, so it's like he's young, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And how
And
old was he when this movie came out? Actually,
I would assume he was
I
in
mean,
his
it's
late
shot in
20s.
'95.
He was probably in his late 20s.
Yeah, like probably mid
let's see.
or late 20s, something like that.
Because I think Ewan McGregor is like in his late 40s now. Maybe, unless I'm off. Oh, he's
He
50.
just turned 50 this year,
Okay.
so he
was...
would have been like 24 or something like that.
Oh, damn. Yeah, that's right.
25. He was 25 in Train Spotting. So yeah, that's about right.
Very, very young. Compared to now, obviously. It's
Compared
like
to
almost,
right now,
it's almost
yeah.
30 years.
Older than
But-
yeah.
Yeah, this was like a very... I mean, it was an interesting movie. I knew very little of it kind of going in, so like...
Me too.
Yeah, so this is kind of going into our segment of our first viewing experience for it. And so this, for both Jesus and I, it was this week. And I like was expecting it to be darker than it was. I mean, there's obviously
me too.
There's a lot of like elements of like you get like the intense visuals of also trigger warning for this episode for drug use, because that's like the entire plot of the movie. So just a fair warning for that. And yeah, so we get like the intense visuals of just people shooting heroin like constantly throughout the movie, but then it felt, I mean, I think it's qualified as a dark comedy somehow in parts maybe, and so like I was just
I'd say
surprised
so. Yeah, that's
by
a good-
how comedic a lot of the moments were, you know.
Mhm.
And that was like that was kind of like the main thing that sat with me as like a first viewing of the movie, because I was like, oh, I thought that this was gonna fall more into like Requiem for a Dream and like being a very depressive, harsh look at drug abuse, but just in Scotland instead of America. But I was wrong, and kind of gratefully so, because I did not want to sit through something very dark this afternoon, really.
Yeah, it would be like this. Yeah, because definitely when I was going through the movie for the first time, expecting what I was gonna see, like it was kind of, for lack of a better term, refreshing, I guess. Seeing like yes, it's a pretty sensitive topic and it is a big deal, but like they do it in a way it's not constantly shoving it in your face, like those like those the old ASPCA commercials of like the super sad dogs and stuff. Yeah, like that's when you start to see the same thing for one specific thing, like you get why, but you don't really see the full scope of what it's like, you know. And like it just gives you like another take on the movie from a direct perspective on a different outlook sort of thing, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I
Yeah.
liked it that way.
Daniel, was this like I mean, you've obviously seen it before because you chose it for this episode, and like have you seen it like multiple times, or was it a movie that you kind of like just saw once and it really just stuck with you?
Yeah, I've seen this multiple times. I think this would have been, I'm counting, maybe like fifth or sixth time I've seen
Oh
it.
man,
Nice.
So it's
Yeah.
it's one of my favorites. It's really high up there for me.
Hell yeah.
So I think I saw it for the first time when I was like probably like 16 or something like that.
Okay, yeah. Was it like school context, or was it just like out of curiosity you like found the movie somewhere? I'm guessing it wouldn't have been school because I don't know what high school would show this.
Yeah.
But
Oh god, no. Yeah, it was just curiosity. I think I saw it on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this seems cool. And then just kind of like, I must. No, I think it would that, and probably just like looking at movie soundtracks, and I heard like this movie's got a great soundtrack. So I was like, let me check it out,
It
and
does.
for sure.
then kind of went from there.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was a book. I'm just now
Yeah.
learning that right now.
And the
Originally published in 1993. Man, so the movie didn't come out that far afterwards.
no, and like I was looking in like the cast list and everything, and well, the author, his name is Irvine Welsh, and apparently
Mhm.
Irvine Welsh plays Mikey Forrester in the movie, which I was like,
Oh, really?
That's really cool. I love
huh.
when they like they do that, like they bring in like the real people that created the original piece, or if it's like a
Yeah.
historical fiction, they bring in like the real people that did the event, and they bring them in as like an extra and like a couple scenes here and there. That was like kind of cool to see it, because like I mean you can, I would assume that like Irvine Welsh like had some type of hand in the movie, maybe like further than just
probably.
being in it, you know?
I'd reckon so. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like
But then again, like when you write a book, that's almost like writing the script.
Well, I don't know, cause like you always have to take a bunch of liberties with that. You know?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it gives you like a generalized like idea of what it's supposed to be like instead of working from scratch. So I'd reckon he had some sort of maybe like casting or something, because he's the person that like imagined the characters in the first place.
maybe. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up really
The
quick.
book's got about the same rating as the movie, 4.5 out of 5, 92%.
I remember I tried reading the book like sometime in high school, and I remember reading. I'm like, this is because he wrote it very much in a Scottish dialect. And when I was reading, I'm like, it's so hard to read.
What does that even mean?
Like, it's not. Yeah, I was like, what does that even mean? It's like, is this supposed to be English? And then I was like, I'll just stick to the movie. I should probably like try and pick it up
Maybe, like,
again,
an
but like,
audiobook
oh
would
my
help.
god, I remember trying to read that book. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's like a very. I mean, I was struggling to listen to or to understand some of the movie, so I was
A little bit, yeah.
kind of sucked. But I was like, I was able to get like I'd say 90% of it. But there's like a few scenes where I was like, that dialogue went over my head. I'm gonna have to rewatch this like 2 or 3 times to understand the full thing. I looked it up, and there's no indication that Irvine Welsh had anything other than being Mikey Forrester, which I mean was like okay, it's like an interpretation of a work, but like you said though,
surprising,
it's
though.
like yeah, kind of surprising, and
Like,
like
it's his book.
if he is especially like in the movie, like it, you would think that there might be a little bit more overlap, but there isn't, and it's fine. It's like good by itself, but I'm like curious to know like how the book is, because there's so many things in this movie that are like so important visually that I'm like, that'd be cool to see like how, if it is at all, like how it's written out and like depicted to give like the same effect. Because like I was,
Yeah.
because like another movie that kind of gives off similar but like even more insane vibe is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which freaked me out so much when I saw it. I was so like confused. But it's a book too, and I just can't even imagine what
Really?
that book has. I'm like, I
What?
don't know if I would ever
Wait.
be able to sit through reading that thing, because it's just, it would just feel like an absolute acid trip of a novel. But yeah, I can kind of picture like a similar thing with the Trainspotting book, just because some of it, you know, it's like describing what like the withdrawal is and what the trips are and stuff, and like if they, I feel like it would be harder to write that out than it is to show it visually, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be like more expertise to go into, like it's so different basically. Like, how would you do that?
I have no idea. I mean, I haven't read it, so.
Actually, just kind of ode to the visionaries, ideas of Danny Boyle. Because I mean, he's also, I think he made one movie before that, but this is the movie that broke him out, and then he was able to make a lot of other great movies like 28 Days Later, 127 Hours, Slumdog Millionaire, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can find like the first page, and I'm gonna read. I'll see if it's like.
Oh yeah.
See if you
sure.
can find a picture on like Google or something.
Yeah. But there's like, because there's so many things that, at least what I found most interesting, because this is like, I think with the only Danny Boyle movie that I've seen other than 127 Hours, and just looking at it, I was kind of blown away with some of the visual imagery that he used, or just like the kind of, I don't know if it was like practical effects, most likely though, with like having the rooms stretch out and stuff like that, or like just the kind of visual gag of having Renton literally dive into the toilet in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when I was thinking about Trainspotting, that's the one thing that I knew about the movie. It was like, oh, that scene where he's like inside the toilet.
Scene.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the baby's head turning at one point. Those are the only two things I knew about the movie. And so when the toilet scene was like within the first 10 minutes, I was just like, oh, okay. But, you know, really thought that it was so cool, like the way that he had like it felt like surrealist imagery when he was like kind of, you know, swimming in that water, and like he's avoiding those old water mines, which just feels like those are meant to be like the pieces of shit that he's just trying to avoid touching, because it'll like,
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, that's so funny that that's like what they decided to put there, but it was like so, I don't know, it was just really well done, because it really did make it feel like how that doing that action would feel like, and it was just discomforting the whole time, but you know, it was that was the point.
So I found the first page of Trainspotting, and
Okay.
I understand exactly what you mean, by the way, by the Scottish dialect in the writing. let's so just this one sentence, this singular line, it says, I'm gonna read it exactly how it is. It says, I'm not even gonna try to put an accent on it. It says, Av go te see mother superior, sick boy, and then something like that. And this is all as says, I wanted the reg te just what?
Yeah, it's
Exactly how Scottish
It's
people
hard.
talk. Like imagine like a really like a super exaggerated Scottish accent in words.
That's crazy.
And that's basically
Yeah.
what it's like trying to read this.
I mean, sometimes I've like ended up seeing images of like Scottish Twitter, and like, and it's like, I mean, people from Scotland, they have such like a blunt sense of humor that are just so funny to me, and like just seeing it written out in tweets, and I read it in that accent, because that's like how they like spell it out that way. It's just like so perfect, but coming from North America,
their own
I
method of
don't
writing.
understand. And
Yeah, my yee brain doesn't really get it. I'm from the south. I can't comprehend.
oh man,
Yeah, I totally get it.
yeah. I'm curious to know though, Daniel, there's a few things that I have written in my notes that was at least as thoughts that I was thinking of, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were on it. Renton, when I was watching it throughout the movie, I mean, he is the protagonist, but like, I kept on thinking that he's like a magnet for all these bad things happening to him, and he's kind of like almost like the unsung cause of all the bad stuff that's happening to his friends. I was just wondering if you ever like picked up on something like that. I can elaborate
Bad
more.
juju. Got bad
Kinda,
juju.
I never really thought of it like that. Well, actually, sort of, cause like, I think that's kind of the whole major just like theme of the movie is that like all this terrible stuff is happening, and yet like heroin is used to like numb yourself away from it, which is both like the joy of it, like, and also the downfall of it. So like he is the linchpin that causes a lot of his friends damage. Like Tommy directly, I guess spoiler warning, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But Tommy directly dies because of like because of like Renton's actions. Spud goes to jail directly because of his actions. Like, and that's the thing. He's not a particularly good person. Even by own self admissions, like, yeah, I'm a horrible person. And like his last little monologue at the end. So I mean, yeah, I do think that like he is kind of, while like the film is driven by his own actions, but his own actions also screw other people over within his life. Even his parents are like, who are just so loving and like,
Yeah.
patient with him. Like he's just kind of putting them through hell, you know?
For sure. Yeah, it was like, I mean, it was just happening when I was uh, noticing the scene where, oh yeah, he took the Tommy and Lizzie's sex tape, he swapped it out, and that led to Lizzie dumping Tommy because they couldn't find the tape, and then that led Tommy to do heroin, which like Renton gave him and stuff. And I was just like seeing this as like, oh, he triggered that event, and then he like also Renton like kind of ended up pulling himself into an illegal sexual relationship with a minor, and I was like, and that like that's its own level of issues and stuff, and I was like, well, that whole like part of the story, I was just kind of shocked by, because I just like, when I clicked on the movie, because I found it from a totally illegal site that we mentioned it last week. I watched it on Soap Today, and
Yeah, we
the
did.
in like, I think it was there, the description of the movie right above like where you can play it, it just said, oh, all this shows all these characters, and Renton's 14-year-old girlfriend Diane. I was like,
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, his what?
His what?
It was like, this is,
Yeah.
and I mean, thankfully, like, I looked into it, and like the actress was like 21 or 22 when she was in the movie.
Really?
So, well, thankfully,
Oh, yeah.
thankfully she was, because otherwise there was like some explicit scenes that would have involved a minor. So, but yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, this took an extra turn, and I guess it was just to show like how kind of depraved the whole group is, because it's like, I mean, Renton immediately feels like kind of remorse for it, because like he was saying, no, we can't, no, this was a crime, like this was illegal, why didn't you say anything? But then it takes a weird turn, because then like Diane like blackmails him almost, but then disappears for the rest of the movie. So I don't know, it's like,
Yeah, my
Then
surprise.
we come back again
at the
later
very
on.
end. Yeah.
My
So, yeah.
surprise comes from more like I thought. Of course, I knew she'd be older, but I didn't think she'd be like 20 something. Like
Well, yeah, like she
Yeah.
had to have been an adult. At least I think. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what the laws are in the UK, but at least abiding to
Because-
the laws here.
yeah, because it just surprised me how people can look so young. Because like Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man. It's a really bad like comparison, but he was like in his late 20s when he played this high schooler.
That's true. Yeah.
That's true.
I just
That
thought it was
was
interesting
great.
how they cast characters like
Yeah. Man. But there's like, I mean, I guess kind of going into, oh, hold on, I just gotta fix something here. Okay, never mind. We're good. There was like a few things that happened in the movie that were just like, on a visual standpoint, like super interesting. And so, Daniel, I want to kind of get your perspective on it, because like you've been able to do more production stuff, like with your classes and everything. And so I was just curious to know, like, there was like the scenes that were when I think it was when he got high for the last time, and it was all framed entirely with like a fisheye lens through a carpet. I was just like curious to know what your thoughts are on that, or like on other scenes that like utilize the same
The
thing.
overdose scene.
The overdose scene, that's what I mean, yeah. Like, I just want to know what your thoughts are, like, for like the technical stuff for like that one, and for like other scenes like it.
Like you said earlier, I think because it's the 90s, like they're doing all the stuff like without CGI and everything. So like in my head, I'm thinking like, yeah, they probably attached like a dolly with like a fisheye lens while he's going to the hospital, and they angle it like a certain way, because like I remember like looking at it, and there are like a bunch of these like 80s goth punk people that he's looking at in the hospital, and I mean like just keeping that within the frame I just think like with stuff like that, especially because like how much like editing and that type of stuff, you think that like you're thinking like he's gonna have like a crap ton of coverage with cameras. You're gonna have like at least like 3 or 4 cameras on the set, all rolling. Especially again, it's the 90s, so they're shooting on probably like 35 millimeter, and it's just like I couldn't break it down within the moment, but like just thinking about like the preparation that it takes. But I think that's probably why the movie is so resonant today. Like it came out in 96 and like it's what 25 years later and it's still as resonant as ever. It's just because like it's such a strong visual movie. There's so much going on, and like you said earlier, it's not it shows heroin use like in a different way than like it just being this depressing thing. And so by expressing it in such a like highly visual way, I think it catches your eye more than like something like an ASPCA, like, oh, it's so sad people are doing drugs. Like, yeah, no.
I mean, it like really does show us like it shows the perspective that the users have, which is like, oh, this is their escape. But then through like the exposition of the story, it shows how it does have negative impacts and stuff. So that's like it's like the cool duality of it all. But yeah,
because it sheds them in a light.
I think
that's like
3 people.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say because it puts them in a light of like because a lot of times these people are classified as like, oh yeah, these are criminals. They're these illegal drug users. Like that's bad. That's always bad for society and stuff like that. But like, it's not like they're not bad people just because of that reason.
Some of them are bad people.
They're bad people for like multitude of other reasons.
Because of other reasons. Yeah, they are bad people. Yes, okay. They are bad people, but not specifically because they are users. That's not the only reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not okay. It's not completely their fault. Completely.
Yeah, and like just like I was like watching that scene with like he falls into the carpet, and I was just thinking of like the parallels it has, and just the use of having him kind of sink in. It kind of reminded me of the sunken place in Get Out and the imagery of that. But then it also made me think about, oh, where else have I seen imagery of heroin use in media somewhere? And I realized in Breaking Bad, they have the opposite effect. Because when Jesse, the only time that he uses heroin, he floats up on like, he's like on a platform that's on like a forklift that raises him up. And so the camera is still in like a fisheye lens type effect, but instead of sinking into the ground, it's doing the opposite, which I was like, dang, that's kind of cool. It's like giving like, it's like the same exact effect, but in opposite directions. It's like, you can see where they might have gotten inspiration in Breaking Bad for it. So yeah, I just overall, like just the technical aspects of stuff, I always just found it so interesting. Even like, especially the ways that they can use some semblance of like the vertigo effect to make a room extend in certain scenes. I don't even know how they did it necessarily, like during the withdrawal.
Even the simple stuff, like the final scene where Renton's walking away and it just like rack focuses like out of him, showing like when he's like monologuing. It's like, oh shoot, like it's showing that like, because he's very much talking about like, oh, I'm gonna join society, I'm gonna be like a good person, so to speak, and it's like it's blurring out. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like fake. He's kind of being a phony, so to speak. You know?
Yeah, which is like disappointing for the character growth that you thought he was gonna go through. But like, I mean, they made a second movie, which I would assume explores it more. I haven't seen the second yet, so I'm looking forward to it though.
I think it's honestly, I don't also think it's disappointing. I think it's more like it takes a character full circle, because at the beginning of Train Spotting and throughout the most of the movie, like he's train spotting, so to speak. Like it's just kind of watching a train drive by, and like with his life, he's like, oh, I'm just watching trains drive by. I'm watching all these terrible things happen, but like by the end, he's actively choosing life, so to speak. And I mean, it makes it like, what's it called? I think I was literally talking about it last night with someone, and like, because I rewatched it last night, I was thinking back to like The Catcher in the Rye, and because like the character Holden Caulfield talks about like phonies and stuff, and the other, I'm like, oh, this is kind of like thinking about Mark Renton. I'm like, yeah, he's kind of like that character, so to speak, because like you see when you're on heroin, you see like the world at large is just being fake and consumerist, and like who needs reasons when you need heroin? Like it's the only reason, and like it allows you to like it allows you sort of to have a bird's eye view from society, but then you realize that like having a bird's eye view from society numbs you away from just what it means to be human. So I think by the end, Mark is choosing to be human again and detoxing not only about like from his addiction, but also his addiction to his friends too. I think that's also a huge theme in the movie, that like it's not only a movie about heroin addiction, but his addiction to just like, you know, especially in regards to like the Begbie character, because I think him and the rest of his mates are addicted to him, even though he's very, very awful.
Yeah, it's like you very much get the.
Jesus, I love your cat in the
Yeah.
background.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh man, but the yeah, the whole thing that you just said, like of being addicted to those friends, that's the exact vibe that I was getting off of it too. It's like it's not
Makes a lot of sense.
it's like the community that you're in that like fuels kind of that addiction. It's like because like yeah, Begbie, like I mean it's said multiple times that he doesn't do drugs, but it's just he's addicted to people or violence in general, and so like just being in that intense presence, like that feels like an even more uncontrollable addiction. That would just that's what kind of I feel triggers. I mean, like you said, it's like what triggers everybody else to like kind of fall back into what they were doing. And so it was cool to see. There was like the trial where I can't remember what's the name of the character that went to prison.
Spud.
Spud. Yeah. So yeah. So like once at the trial's done, Spud's in jail, and the rest of them were sitting at that bar. Sick Boy, I noted like he said to Renton, he said, "Choose life," which is like the exact opposite of like what the whole monologue at the beginning of the movie was about. And so like you can see that like Sick Boy is trying to like instigate that maybe in himself, but like more importantly in Renton's mind. And so it's cool that we get to see him like fulfill all that stuff. He like finds a place to live, he becomes like some type of real estate agent and stuff, but then the person that brings him back down is Bigby, who just shows up at his door out of nowhere. Which like as soon as that scene happened, I was like, oh no. I was kind of just annoyed at the character. I was like, just leave him alone already, man. Like he's finally doing okay. Then he just like shows up, and I guess it's like there might be only like 20 minutes or 30 minutes left from the movie there, and it kind of just goes into like the whole drug deal sequence, which breaks the whole friend group apart basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's intense. It's an intense movie, but it's really fun.
And you already mentioned Requiem for a Dream, right, Andre?
I
Before?
did.
Did you?
Yeah, it's another movie that I'm like hesitant to watch, but I know like
Yeah.
quite a majority.
I
of
know
it.
a lot of it, and from what I've seen from this thing, they almost seem like, I don't want to say opposites because they deal with the same issues, but like in the way that they portray like these problems in the world, like they are pretty opposite from each other. Like more as like we see this movie as kind of like it's a lot lighter than you'd expect, like we mentioned in the beginning, and right here in Requiem for a Dream, you can already see in the genre that it's classified as psychological thriller and a drama.
Yeah.
So
not
it
a dark
seems like
comedy.
yeah.
But it's like arguably the same.
It's a
main
similar
theme.
concept.
It's like the same main
Yeah.
theme, except it's like obviously the specifics of the story are different, but it's all centered around addiction of some kind.
Yeah, because I know at one part this guy gets like this really bad infection in his arm because of it, and the rest in the hospital he almost dies, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure they amputate his arm. You know, spoiler alert. But like, and then we get the same thing, but it's just it has a very different effect on like whenever you're watching it.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I was just even thinking about the scene that I think was meant to be kind of like the most uncomforting or like terrifying to watch in Train Spotting, just because of like how like the visual stuff of it was just the most jarring was the withdrawal like sequence.
Yeah.
But like still there was funny moments. Like the baby's head turning is in itself funny
Yeah.
because it then just like drops down onto Renton and stuff. But like
He's screaming.
yeah, but then he's screaming and it's like so intense and everything. He sees his dead friend like trying to talk to him.
Yeah, then you kind of
which,
like, ooh.
which is like very rough to see, but it's like weird because they're trying to. It begs the question like, should you make light of a topic like this, or should you keep it as dark as it is in reality? Like it's like the whole play.
I think that's like sort of like I was saying a bit earlier. It is a huge testament to its time, because like, you know, in the early 90s or whatever, like everyone wants to look at things from like an ironic point of view. So it's like ironically taking a look at, because I think everybody kind of knew the idea of, oh yeah, heroin usage, it's depressing, blah, blah, like you're going to see people die. But it's like, you know, let's flip that. Let's not necessarily make it such a depressing like encounter. Let's show the light of it, but let's also like make sure like, you know, this is heroin addiction. People that are heroin addicts like deal with this. I think to contrast this, like I haven't seen Requiem for a Dream, but a movie that I did see also about heroin addiction is Heaven Knows What by the Safdie brothers, and it's like completely opposite because it's very grounded and just very intense and just like stomach churning, really. Which is still, this film still also gives the same stomach churning effect.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily like stomach churning because of like it's stomach churning within its visuals, you know. So it still gives off the effect of holy crap, you know. Like even just the baby, like that scene where they first revealed that the baby had died was intense, you know.
That was like the hardest. That was like one of the harder like just frames to look at, because like they really modeled that like fake baby to like look like it's been dead for a while, which was like the whole point, because we don't know how long of a bender they were on at that time, but clearly long enough for it to go gray, which is what that was like the part I was like, oh god, that's not easy to see. But like I mean I do stand by like what I said earlier, and like relating this movie to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas to have like a similar vibe, because Fear and Loathing came out in 1998, and that
2 years afterwards.
Yeah, and so it's like I mean, like I said, it didn't take my film history classes didn't touch on 90s independence, so I don't know if it falls into the same ironic view of things, but I'm assuming it really does when having looked at Fear and Loathing. But that movie, it takes like the most psychedelic, trippy, like high octane look at like hallucinogenic / like narcotic drug use, and it's such an insane movie because it like shows you the insanity of it all, how none of it makes sense, but then it equally has like visual moments that are meant to be funny and that do kind of hit on these goofy visuals. Like there's this whole moment where Johnny Depp's character, I remember, he's like at a bar in the main section of the casino that they spend a lot of the movie at, and he turns around and all of a sudden all the people in the bar are lizard people, and it's like these super highly practical, like Jim Henson looking puppets that are these life-size lizards everywhere, like making out with each other, doing shots, like just doing drugs and stuff, all in this like bar. But when you see that, it's like a 2-minute scene. It's just so weird, but it's like so goofy at the same time. But it gives
the cover of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in general.
Yeah, it's just like the
like him with the
stretched
twisted,
out,
like the
stretched out head of Johnny Depp and stuff as he's like going through it, and it's just I'd say it's like a similar kind of like what you were saying, Daniel. It's like the ironic take on these things because people know that it's bad, but it's just like, how can we talk about it in a new, different way? And like you said, like
kind of like murder in movies now.
Yeah, murder in movies
like
now, a lot of the time it's like done in a goofy way, or it's just done so carelessly.
Yeah, like you just killed a man. Like you just killed 30 people.
Yeah, so like I feel like we're in that wave now where, I mean, we just talked about the Cornetto trilogy last week, and I feel like those movies are a
Yeah.
testament to how murder has become like the ironic, or like just death in
Yeah,
general
like violence in
has
general.
become like
Oh,
violence
yeah.
has become like the ironic thing now. Maybe, I don't know. In 20 years they
No,
might,
yeah,
view it
absolutely.
that way
The
because it might be
Boys.
done in a different way. The Boys, that's another
Yeah.
good example of that.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
Invincible. I was like, nah, that one was a little too dark.
Invincible is a little bit darker, yeah. But yeah, like you were saying, Daniel, that the movie that the Safdie brothers made is like a lot more intense. Would you say that like films that try to tackle drug use now have returned to a more serious and like darker tone than the 90s did?
I think like, well, that movie came out 2014, but I think just in general the tone that like societies has is post irony. Post irony. I've
Yeah.
read too many memes or whatever, so good lord. But it mixes the sincere with the ironic. So sometimes it's kind of hard to tell if someone's being like genuine or they're being like, and I think that's more or less how stories in general are being told now, and then also just like how I think something like darker would be portrayed, because you mentioned like The Boys. I haven't seen too much of it, but I know like it does have the flip on like Superman or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, so it seems like it's sometimes kind of like the line's being towed a lot more. So it's kind of more like, huh, are they really being like
Yeah,
for
because
real, or is it just
there's a pretty new movie that came out in April called Four Good Days. I'm not sure if you have seen it, but it's about the
Don't know
same
that
thing. It's about like this it's specifically about like, I've seen the synopsis of it. I haven't seen the movie, but I know what it's about because it's about this lady going through withdrawal, right? Because she has to stay 4 days sober. But of course, like we've seen in the movies, that like the withdrawal symptoms are like really bad. And it just like happens. It's more about like her trying to deal with that, like in herself, with having a lot of people around her. And that's another testament. Is like that one is more of a serious approach to this like topic, as it has like that more dramatic or like really sad sort of overtone to it.
Yeah.
And that one came out this year.
Okay, cool. Because like
Apparently, it's got a 51%.
I think there is,
Oh.
I think there also is a little bit more seriousness being taken though. Like it is muddled between irony and like not sincerity, but it is a little bit more serious because I think like nowadays we're all kind of aware that like if you make a completely ironic piece of medium with just like drug use or something like that, you can see the issues and like the irresponsibility that it could have on the creator. You know, I think because maybe it's a testament to just how the trust that like Boyle and his contemporaries had in people, that like they're like, yeah, you're obviously not gonna like, maybe hopefully you're not gonna watch Trainspotting and be like, yeah, I want to shoot up heroin now. But like I hope that's not people's like takeaway from it. But like nowadays I think like we're a little more cognizant, like this media that we've created, something could happen, so people are towing the line a little bit more, which I mean it has its pros and cons, but
it's like a checks and balances system, right?
Yeah.
Like this one movie comes out, makes a little bit of a light to it, and then this other movie comes out and it's like, yeah, but it's also really bad.
Yeah, because like I mean, it goes on like the spectrum of like, I would say independent cinema would risk more, even like today, like indie films would risk more going into the ironic route, but then big budget companies would never ever want to like go into that because they have too much money going into stuff. They are like
the box office and everything else.
Yeah, they're too susceptible to like complete boycott and criticism, basically, just because it's like, if you saw, I don't know, in like the new Fast and Furious movie, people made fun of and like joked around about drug use and like put down any type of struggle of it, the type of repercussions that would have would be intense. Whereas like if you put that in like an indie movie that does like a small festival route, it would it would definitely be considered ironic. It wouldn't be considered as serious. So yeah, it's cool to think about like not cool necessarily. It's like interesting to think about like the intricacies of like Hollywood now and how there's almost like a return to the old systems of like huge control by the big movie companies over everything in film, which sucks because like looking at film history, that was like not the best period for
Not a
like,
thing.
the small guys or the small workers in the industry. It was just benefiting the bigger white men behind the office chairs and stuff like that at that time. But yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm thinking back again at Breaking Bad because like that's just the main piece of modern media that I have for things that reference drug abuse and stuff, and that like I believe toes the line quite relatively well between ironic and serious, because it's like the goofiness of this like middle-aged like chemistry teacher who's just like this Gomer who's like can't
everything
really do
starts
much.
on his midlife crisis.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, cancer diagnosis. Midlife crisis happens later in the show. Technically, I think. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah,
but
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and so like, but like seeing that, it's just like it takes this premise, which, I mean, at face value, without looking too in depth of the show, it's like, oh, this middle-aged suburban chemistry teacher enters the drug trade with like the cartels. That's
You're like, what?
that feels like it's ironic. That feels like it's goofy as hell to think about that. But then when you actually watch the show, you get to see all the serious tones of it, but there's still like some light with certain characters. Like Jesse is meant to be some form of comedic relief, but then he gets his own like very intense emotional moments that show his struggles with abuse and
The
stuff.
poor
So
dude, bro.
yeah, so you get to, I believe that's like one of the things that like perfectly kind of balances that. But then again, there's also definitely more pieces of media. It's just I haven't seen enough to really get a good catalog. But yeah, there's like the spectrum of things. Like there's the Safdie movie, and then in the middle I'd say is Breaking Bad, and there's Trainspotting on the other side. And then Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, like way down even farther than Trainspotting, because that's just an absurdist movie. Really recommend watching it though.
Or like The Hangover.
The Hangover, that's like another one that. Yeah,
It
I
makes
mean, I
light
don't know
of
if they do
your stuff,
heroin
yeah.
in The Hangover. They might in like
No,
one of the
no,
other
no.
movies. Or I think I believe that there's a moment where they smoke crack in it, in one of them. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't seen all three. I've seen the first two.
I haven't either.
But yeah,
Maybe we
those
should do
ones
an episode on that.
on The Hangover
On those
trilogy.
movies. Yeah.
That'd be funny.
Heartfelt magnum opus.
I wonder if they make it. No, they cannot be making a fourth one. Let's just check.
Are they making a fourth Hangover?
I'm not sure. That's what I'm checking.
I don't know. I can't see.
Is there
Zach
going to be a
Galifianakis
Hangover
doing that
4?
again.
No,
No. Okay.
No.
All right.
probably. Most likely not. Is what they say. That's what Google says.
Sweet. I mean, yeah. One thing that I was curious to know, because I noticed a lot in Trainspotting that Boyle uses a ton of high-angled shots, and just I mean, we talked about like the fisheye lens, like he uses that quite a bit. Is that like a common recurring thing with his movies? I mean, assuming that you've seen more, Daniel.
I didn't really think about like his other movies, like high angle shots. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like,
Let's look up what movies he has.
I mean, when I was thinking about,
because I'm thinking,
oh, go ahead.
oh no, 'cause I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, probably like if I'm thinking high angle, I'm like, yeah, 127 hours. Like, definitely
Yeah,
used
because
a lot of
like,
high angle
in that
shots.
canyon.
Yeah, and like
28 Days Later is pretty heavy.
maybe Slumdog, but like I'm thinking like his later stuff, like Steve Jobs and Yesterday. I don't really think so. Maybe, but like, yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about Danny Boyle as his director is that like he's one of those people that like has no very distinctive style, because like this is the same guy who made Trainspotting made Yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
which is like they're worlds apart as movies. You know, I think maybe the reoccurring through line is that like the usage of music within his films, because like
Okay.
Yesterday, obviously a huge music movie. Trainspotting is a huge music movie.
Mhm.
Slumdog, a huge music movie, and then maybe like themes of survival. I think also could probably be like attached to his work because
That's fair.
in Trainspotting, again, huge theme of survival. The Beach, another huge survival movie. Not survival, so to speak. 28 Days Later, survival.
28 weeks later.
127 hours, survival. Even Steve
Obviously,
Jobs,
yeah.
or weeks. I don't know if it was weeks or day. No, it's days because weeks is the sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, because 28 Days Later, and
Yeah.
then yeah. So I think not necessarily like visually he has the same style, but I think like themes of survival and then just also just like strong soundtracks are something that like keeps popping up in his work.
Cool. Yeah.
So maybe the high angles I'll have to look back and see, but I mean, I think those are some of the things that stick throughout his work.
For sure. I was just asking that question because like I know there's like a ton of directors that have like visual styles that really stick, but other ones that maybe it's like themes that they use. So I just didn't know where Boyle set for that because I was thinking mainly of 127 hours.
Wait,
That movie.
what is T2 Trainspotting?
Oh, that's the sequel.
Oh yeah, he directed T2.
Yeah,
Yeah, the sequel to Trainspotting.
I was just about to figure. I was just about to bring up the fact that like this doesn't really seem like one of those movies that you would have a sequel to.
No, it makes sense because actually the book has a sequel too. So the book has a sequel,
Yeah,
and
okay.
then they're like, oh, you know what?
And like just looking
Adapt
at
the sequel to the book, and like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
81%.
That's a. Oh yeah. Look. Oh okay. That's not that bad of a score. But yeah, I was just looking at like, the synopsis of it earlier today, and it just said like, after 20 years of living abroad, Renton comes back to and meets up with his friends, and so as soon as I think of that, I'm just like, oh no, is this gonna be? I haven't seen it.
It
yet,
was
so I'm like,
actually-
is this gonna be like a bad visit or
Yeah.
something? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
I have
was
something to look
actually,
forward
like,
to with that
about-
movie. Sorry,
I was
cut
gonna
you
say
off.
it's about 20 years after the first movie, which is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. 2017.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool that they planned it out like that. And but I was thinking in terms of like the visual stuff again. I wasn't sure if Danny Boyle had a style, but I was just picturing 127 hours, and knowing now that Danny Boyle's directed it, it's like, of course he directed it because in Trainspotting, the moments where it's like done in a very constricted space, Danny Boyle, like, he used that space so well, and like for like the way that he would be able to manipulate the sets and stuff to like be able to fit everything in, or just like the really constricted overdose scene with like the carpets on either side of the frame. I was like, okay, yeah, he knows what to do when it's like the space in the frame is like closed up, and so 127 hours, it's literally closed up because you're stuck in this little cave or like this canyon. And so I was like, okay, so that's what made me
I
think
wonder how
of the
they
question
filmed that
if,
movie.
really close together. I'm guessing like all the crew was like touching shoulders or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, even the toilet scene too. That's also another very claustrophobic
Yeah,
scene.
Yeah, and like, I'm just curious to know how like he I mean, it's definitely gonna be very simple, but just it comes off very well polished in the scene. Like, it looks like he's literally going into that toilet that has like a very
It
small
does.
like drain pipe, and I was like, oh. So I would have been cool to like see some behind the scenes photos or like videos of like how they like cut the images together and stuff. I'm assuming that it was the bottom half of the frame is different than the top half of the frame, you know, like they actually have
Yeah.
it going into a tube and then they just put that over top of the lower half, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not smart enough to think about that. But
Trainspotting is a special movie to me because I think like not only is it a very visceral movie, but it's so visually engaging, and like I'm also a huge sucker for movies with amazing needle drops, and like this movie is like the soundtrack to end all soundtracks. Like it's so, like from literally the first like 5 seconds is already music, and it's a banger. So if you're a sucker for people or for movies that like have great music, this is it. If you're sucking for great performances, everybody gives a huge performance. I think Ewan McGregor is a huge standout, and this is the role that like breaks him out. If you're a fan of like his later stuff, like The Impossible, Mulholland Rogue, and like Star Wars prequel trilogy, it's a whole different Ewan McGregor. But it's so exciting to see the range that he can give off. And I mean, it's a hard movie to watch. It's definitely not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, like you said, drug abuse and just, like, sexual conduct that's like very very immoral. But I mean, it's impactful. It changed my life and the way I want to make movies. So I think at the very least you'll be weirded out, but it's like that was a very entertaining watch. And after all these years, I'm glad that like I can see it again and again and again, still be equally as entertained as the first time I saw it when I was like, what the hell is this? When I was like 15 or 16.
Yeah, thank you so much again for coming. This was like very much an interesting movie to explore, especially since it's one that I've never seen. Like, and like you said, I can definitely see this one impacting how I want to make films in the future. It's very much like its own. It has its own style. It has its own feeling to it that I've never seen really in other films that tackle such a topic, or in general that have done something like this. So it's not surprising that it's become such a favorite amongst so many people. But yeah, I guess that's it. I'll leave.